World Health Organization has declared loneliness a pressing public health threat.
How has the most connected society in history also become the loneliest?
Social isolation can be as deadly as smoking up to 15 cigarettes a day.
Loneliness is killing us.
We've been hearing about the loneliness epidemic for a while now, and I don't think it's any secret that the way our world is set up, it just tends to make people more lonely. Economic disparity in terms of both income and wealth is at historic highs, and particularly in advanced economies. And more people are just living alone, living paycheck to paycheck, and this leaves them with little time or energy to socialize or find romantic interests. So increasingly, we settle for the cheaper and easier option of letting ourselves fall into social media, to patch this hole, to fill in as a substitute for our very real social needs, right? But as we know, social media, the thing that's supposed to connect us, often does the opposite. We get sucked into this brain rot content instead for cheap little hits of dopamine and engage in these superficial connections online that don't actually do anything to decrease the feeling of lonely. And the modern world as a whole, it just doesn't care, right? So many industries profit off of this. The economy thrives off of it. And so it actively works to stop us from making deep and meaningful connections, while telling us at the same time that social isolation has gotten so bad it's considered a health crisis. And you know all this, but I'm guessing on some level you still can't seem to fix it for yourself. So why is that? Hi, my name is Sonia. I talk about media, tech, and their effects on the human condition. And today I want to talk about why are we so lonely and why can't we seem to get out of it, even if we understand in theory what the problem is. So this January, Mark Zuckerberg said at a congressional hearing that there is no causal link between using social media and young people having worse mental health. But social scientists increasingly disagree with this statement. Recent studies are showing that there is a link between teen social media use and reduced well-being or mood disorders, mainly depression and anxiety. And there was even an MIT study that looked at the introduction of Facebook across college campuses in the mid-2000s and saw that symptoms associated with these disorders spread as the social media platform did. And I feel like, honestly, younger people, just like intrinsically, we know this. We understand that social media is bad for us, right? It makes you feel bad about your body image, makes you feel bad about your status or wealth or friend group, whatever it is. But we still somehow, like on the surface level, we forget. And that's why videos like this, just showing what real skin without a filter looks like, it gets millions of views, likes, and comments of people saying thank you. So how are we so aware of all the harms that social media does, but we still can't seem to turn ourselves off from it, disconnect? Well, it's because it's an addiction. So social media became more addictive because of the personalization factor. There was a recent study on addiction behavior on TikTok that shows that the system quality has a stronger influence than information quality in determining someone's experience on the app, and that the flow experience has significant direct and indirect effects on TikTok addiction behavior. So the flow experience, the state of flow, that's that internal state of enjoyment, concentration, and the time distortion that goes with it. It's when you forget everything else and completely get lost in and immersed in the thing you're doing. So what they're saying here is that's what's addictive. And then information quality, so how well content is made or how right it is, that's not as important as system quality, which is how well the app is working. How well the app works to put you in a flow state, that's what's important in keeping you hooked, in making you addicted. So how does it put you into a flow state? It gives you exactly what you want from it, what you need from it. And the important thing here is it doesn't matter if what it gives you is true or not, right or wrong, or even possible. Its job is just to feed people. It feeds people fantasies of a luxurious life, of a dream job, of perfect travel experiences. Or for others, it feeds them help or advice, something to make them feel not as alone as they really are. But it doesn't matter, again, if any of this is real or right. The algorithm just gives you more of what you want. So there's been a change in the social media landscape, and it started really with Instagram. Because before it was about finding your friends, talking to them, connecting with people that you've known at some point. And then after it became, for the first time, about crafting this online identity, trying to attract an audience and get followers of people that have never met you and probably never will. And as primarily an image-based platform, it makes it more conducive to expressing oneself by displaying things like commercial wealth, or symptoms of it like constructed, bought beauty, and peripherals like fashion, etc. And that's why Instagram Face was and still is a thing, And it's also why the first influencers were usually people that were already wealthy, or well off at least. So now we have this shift to video though, right? And this global competition for attention that used to be sought through by showing off beauty or luxury, things that you can display in images. Now that's opened up to also what we can share better on video, right? Which would be information-based content like education or advice. And while we understand the dangers of looking at filtered faces online, we're only starting to take in the dangers of what comes from people that are competing for your attention by giving you information-based content like advice. Because remember, it doesn't matter if it's right. What matters is that you want it right now. So on TikTok, the hashtag mental health has been searched for more than 67 billion times. And there's this phenomenon now called social media therapy. As young adults and teens are increasingly struggling with their mental well-being, they're turning to social media for help, since therapists are expensive and increasingly harder to find. And the answer is, they're there, they're on social, but like I said, they're not necessarily accurate. In fact, there's more of a chance that they're not accurate, that they're not right, than there is that they are. Because just like on image-based platforms, the goal was for influencers to give audiences a perfect face, not their real one. In the same way, now the goal is to give you perfect advice, okay? So quick sound bites, witty clapbacks, a feeling that you're in the right, something to hype you up. That's what's more important than giving you something that's real, something that's specific to your situation, and something that might hurt your feelings, but that'll actually help you out in the long run. Think about it like your friends. Your friends will always tell you what you want to hear, right? Because they want you to like them. Your best friend, though, that person is going to tell you what you need to hear, what they know is actually going to be good for you, even if it might make you hate them. And your best friend, they're not on TikTok. But we'll get back to that in a second. So there's a growing concern that teens and young adults are using TikTok, and then also afterwards the other short form video platforms, to self-diagnose mental health conditions. They watch videos that describe symptoms of conditions like ADHD, BPD, autism, or depression, and then they apply it to themselves because they find that content relatable. But self-diagnosing like this, that can lead to so many problems, right? At the very minimum, a lot of increased stress and anxiety about conditions you may not actually even have. And at the worst, it's following advice on how to deal with these things that isn't verified advice. What they are doing is they're going into an interactive media space to soothe themselves, to make themselves feel better, to make themselves the master of the environment when they don't feel like they've mastered the environment of the outside world, said Dr. Michael Rich, director of the Digital Wellness Lab at Boston Children's Hospital. So when I was at my darkest, when I was trying to crawl out of my darkest actually, I ended up on TikTok. And I had left my whole old social circle. I had changed my whole environment. I was just fully in this mode of I need to heal my mind. And I went online for a connection, not a diagnosis or anything similar, but I still seem to find suggestions for a lot of them. I also just got a lot of general advice. But one of the things that is really important is that it took me a really long time to realize this, but when I had a bad day, that very easily turned into a bad week and sometimes even a bad month. All because I lingered a little bit too long on a post that was sad. On a post that could suddenly pull me back, drag me back into everything that I worked so hard to escape from, that I changed my whole life to get away from. And it'd be the tiniest moment of weakness, and sometimes just general interest even, and suddenly I had to fight off an onslaught of similar posts like that. And I had to hit uninterested for weeks straight just to try and get out of that poison. So for a recent study by the Center for Countering Digital Hate, researchers posed as 13-year-olds and they searched and liked mental health videos. And they found that TikTok pushed potentially harmful content to these users on average every 39 seconds. And some users, they received recommendations for content about suicide within 2.6 minutes of joining the app. Let's just let that sit for a minute while I drink my tea. Because, okay, but this video is about why are you lonely. So I'll tell you that right now. Because I think after a certain period of time, people like I did become aware of the diagnosis promoting type of content. Watch enough of this kind of stuff online, you get to this point where you're like, wow, just have everything, I guess. And it becomes absurd, right? You spend enough time online, enough time in these kind of spaces, and you also start to see that a lot of this content, a lot of the same texts or things that people are saying is just kind of like copy pasted. And you realize you're not reading something personal to them, it's just viral, reused content. And if you haven't gone to this stage, you'll probably notice it a lot more now that you heard somebody mention it. Okay, but what I think is a lot more dangerous is stuff that is not as obvious, not as extreme as a diagnosis, and not as noticeable because it doesn't make you think too much or reflect on yourself as an individual. The stuff that's ruining your life and making you lonely is TikTok, Instagram Reels, and YouTube Shorts advice. That's wrecking your life. And why? 1. These apps work to give you what you want, not what is right. 2. These influencers win when they give you perfect advice, not what is right. 3. The content that you're pushed into when you're having a bad moment, a bad day, that's bad content. That's the content that you have to fight out of getting. Except it's a lot easier to notice harmful content when it's promoting suicide than when it's a friendly person giving you advice. I'm not telling you to completely disconnect, even though for some people that might be the smartest option. For other people, though, that's just going to push you further into loneliness, and that is not going to help. The best solution is to become aware of why and how certain types of content are so dangerous. So that just like we have become aware of like why it's so bad to constantly see only filtered faces online, eventually we can start becoming a lot more critical of why you shouldn't just be blindly taking in anybody's advice online. And I want to just stress also, it really doesn't matter if that person is trying to be genuine, if they're genuinely trying to give you good advice. And I know that's a little ironic considering that's technically what I'm doing, but we will get to this. Okay, but I do think this is enough for one video. These thought processes helped me see a little bit more clearly, so that's why I wanted to share them. I will get into specific examples of exactly what type of content I think this is, why it's so damaging, and break it all down. I'm going to do that in the next video, but I want to instead leave you with one very simple question that I think kind of sums all of this up, and that is, if social media is causing you deteriorating mental health in the first place, why the fuck would you go to it to fix that? Good night.